And now I can do whatever I want. So I get to preach today. That's exciting. So I was going to talk, we can talk about the weather or... Hey, are you here still? I thought you were going...
Yeah, you want some help?
I don't know if I need your help, but since you're here, did you prepare?
Maybe you go ahead. I'll just sit here.
Oh, okay, yeah. He's probably still taller. You can still see him on camera. So yeah. So since you're up here, why don't we just do this thing together? That sound good?
Sure.
All right. Okay. Is that good with you guys? Yeah. Apparently, Revelations 3, our next church is pretty short, so he needed some help. So yeah. So where are we?
We are in Philadelphia this morning.
Okay. What? Hey, he's not even on.
There you go.
Anywhere.
Am I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey! We are in the Church of Philadelphia this morning.
Philadelphia, that's the, I think it's the only American city named in the Bible.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Look at you with the
I
facts.
know. My mom said I was smart. So, hey.
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, interesting city.
Fantastic city. The birthplace of freedom, right? The Liberty Bell. The Constitutional Congress.
I'm pretty excited about Philadelphia. I have a different
Benjamin Franklin.
I have a different perspective, I think. I feel like it's a city that they based their whole city off a fictional character who is a boxer.
Yeah,
That didn't exist.
they do have a big Rocky statue.
And they put nacho cheese in their sandwiches. I don't know if you guys knew that, but yeah.
This is the food guy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we got a different perspective there. Let's talk about sports. Everyone's on the same opinion with sports, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we had a good sports this summer.
Yeah. Go Giants, huh?
Yeah. The number one sporting event this summer. Did you watch it? The Tour de France.
Giants.
Yeah, my parents. Tour de France.
Tour de France.
Do you know what they tour France on?
Like mopeds, right?
No, it's bicycles, and it was the number one watched sporting event, and I'm sure everyone here watched it, right? Okay.
I watched a grand total of 0 minutes and 0 seconds. Did you seriously watch it?
I think I watched the whole thing, yeah.
You watched the whole thing?
Yeah, I did. Okay, let's move on. So let's talk about a different perspective. Introverts and extroverts.
Yes.
We're all on the same page there, right?
Absolutely.
Everyone needs an extrovert friend because that's where all the fun is, right?
Everybody needs an introvert to kind of ground them and help them be healthy, huh?
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. Where are all my extrovert friends? Come on. Where are they? See? They'll always let you know. The extroverts always let you know where they are.
Yeah.
So,
introverts, maybe like a little golf clap.
yeah. There's a lot of introverts in here.
What's up?
There's a lot of introverts in here. Okay, so let's talk about perspective today and opportunity. So we are in Revelation chapter 3, and like Mike said, we're on the church letter to Philadelphia. So go ahead and stand with me as we read God's word. If you're new here or don't have your Bible or phone charged, there's a Bible in the seat back in front of you. And if you just take your Bible, we're in the very back here. That's where we've been the last couple weeks. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, He who is holy, who is true, who has the key of David, who opens doors and no one will shut, and who shuts, no one opens, says this. I know your deeds. Behold, I have put before you an open door which no one can shut, because you have little power and have kept my word and have not denied my name. Behold, I will cause those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jew and are not, but lie. I will make them come and bow down at your feet and make them know that I have loved you. Because you have kept your word, your word of perseverance, I will keep you from the honor of testing that hour which is about to come, the whole world to test who dwell on the earth. I am coming quickly. Hold fast what you have, so that no one will take your crown. He who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and will not go out from it anymore. And I will write on him the name of my God, the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and my new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches.
Awesome. You can have a seat. So thankfully, we're talking perspective this morning, and you're not here to hear Mike's perspective or Chris's perspective. We're here to hear God's perspective as we do every Sunday. And specifically, we're looking at these words to this church in Philadelphia. So we'll start off and just talk about who is Philadelphia. What we've seen as we go through these different letters that were written at the beginning of the book of Revelation is we get a different approach that Jesus has to these different churches based on who they are. And I love that because God speaks to us where we are. God meets us where we are. And so we've seen in these cities, we've seen cities that were religious capitals. We've seen cities that were the political or financial capital, cultural capitals. And this morning, we see none of that in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the most insignificant small church that we look at of the 7 churches in this series. Honestly, Philadelphia is like a blip on the historical radar for most of ancient time. The most significant thing that Philadelphia does is it gets destroyed by an earthquake in 17 AD. That's like the biggest thing. Other than that, it barely shows up in the historical record. Where it is, this is a city that's on the frontier. It's right on the edge of civilization. So there's Greco-Roman civilization to the west, and out to the east, Philadelphia is in the middle of what's modern-day Turkey. That's how far Greco-Roman culture made it. And then further east is more, I don't know why I'm pointing at you guys. Sorry. You guys are like the uncultured, uncouth wasteland out there. And Philadelphia is, hey, plenty of seats on this side, people. Philadelphia is like right at the edge. It's like St. Louis was in the United States for a while. The gateway to the unexplored West, right? This is the gateway from civilized, cultured Greco-Roman areas over into what is not yet cultured over there. It was founded by one of 2 brothers, either Eumenes or Atticus. Only significant because these 2 brothers treated each other differently than most brothers did throughout history. These 2 brothers were constantly put at each other's throats of who was going to overthrow the other and grab power. They both were kind of ruling jointly. And in fact, at one point, Eumenes thought Atticus was dead. He was said to have died in battle. He takes over control, and then Atticus comes back. He wasn't dead, and everybody's like, all right, who's going to win the power struggle? And Eumenes says, well, Atticus is the ruler, so here. And he goes back to being second in command. Later on, Eumenes is in Rome, and the Roman emperors said, if you unseat your brother, we will put the whole support of Rome behind you. And Eumenes refused to do it. These were 2 brothers who supported each other. And so Philadelphia, founded by one of these brothers, was named after how they treated each other. Philadelphia means brotherly love, the city of brotherly love, right? So here's what's interesting. That's not really exciting. It's boring. You know what's exciting is victory, right? Romulus and Remus. You know that story? Romulus kills Remus, founds Rome, and has this big flourishing empire. And that wasn't Eumenes and Atticus. You haven't even heard of them because they did the boring thing and actually had each other's back. And this city was named after that. Not big and flashy and exciting, but a depth there of doing the right thing. And then destroyed by this earthquake in 17 AD, the worst earthquake in the ancient history. Completely leveled a whole section of central Turkey and Philadelphia right in the middle of that. And so they were rebuilding. At this point, it's 70, 80 years after that earthquake. And so they've rebuilt, but they've rebuilt modestly. This is a small frontier town. And so we're talking this morning about perspective, and they had a perspective on themselves. Jesus referenced it in the words that Chris just read. Their perspective was, we're small and weak. We're barely hanging on. We're insignificant over here. And this morning we're talking about having the right perspective on the world around us and on ourselves as well. Do we see the way God sees? Because what Jesus sees here is he sees great opportunity. I've opened a door for you that nobody can shut. I'm not done with you. You're going to do great things. You have great opportunity. That was God's perspective. Their perspective was, we're little and small and can't do much of anything. So let's take a little bit of time, and Chris is going to talk us through these two different ways of looking at the world.
Yeah, perspective. Yeah, I always think of one of my favorite movies, Ratatouille. Who's seen that? It's a great movie. And there's a famous scene in that movie where this food critic, Ego, orders perspective. And the waiter's like, oh, we don't have perspective. What are you talking about? And he's like, I'll order the perspective. You provide the food. And I think that's a great way to look at perspective. And that's how I always kind of remembered that. And I love the movie Ratatouille. But there's actually two Google definitions. The first one is the art of drawing a two-dimensional surface and having a perspective there. The second is what we're going to focus on this morning. It's a particular attitude towards a way of regarding something or a point of view. And I want to talk about God's... Hey, water? Yeah. Water? Guess water? Sorry, hang on. That communion cracker was massive, by the way. So, thank you. Did you drink half of this?
Maybe.
The glass is half empty. That was not nice of you to give me. I'm not sure if this is going to get me through the whole sermon.
I don't know.
Wow, thanks, Mike. He gave you, it's almost halfway full.
Almost.
It's so nice of him. He's a nice guy. Oh, that's the good water from the water fountain, too. Okay, anyways, yeah, that was planned, sorry. So, God's eyes versus our eyes. In life, we commonly see the perspective of the glass is half full or half empty. So, I've seen this perspective used mostly as opinions. So, I want to share you a story of when I first got my big dose of perspective in my young 20s. So, one of my first big jobs was a high school teacher. And when I became a high school teacher and told everyone I was going to work with teenagers the rest of my life, everybody wanted to share their opinion with me on how teenagers are the most evil, worst thing on the planet. Everybody. I would go to the grocery store and people would be like, oh, what are you doing? I'm a high school teacher. Like, I'm so sorry. Why? I don't get to work with adults. It's amazing. When I went to that job, I had such a negative view on teenagers. I thought it was going to be one of the worst things ever. When I was hired, the district actually warned me that I was going to take this job. So I taught culinary arts, which used to be the old home economics courses you probably took. So I was teaching kids how to cook, and part of my contract was I had to do these events for the district and fundraisers and boosters, provide the food for it. And I was going to have to use teenagers to get community service to work with that. So the district actually warned me that it was going to be extra hard, that I was going to have to do that part of it. And so when I told my chef friends and restaurant owners that I was doing this, they were like, oh, how are you doing this with untrained teenagers? And man, was my perspective just blown away by these kids. It was incredible. I worked there for about 8 years, and some of the stuff I did with just 14 and 15-year-old kids. We did 500-person dinners. We had silent auctions, transportations. I worked out in West County. We had kids that had cattle ranches in Bodega Bay. They would drive their souped-up F-250s, because I didn't have a truck, and they would run the equipment out to Santa Rosa for me in their trailers and stuff. That was insane. I had 2 kids one time. They made a picnic bench in woodshop in 2 hours, and then we auctioned it off that night. I would have kids that would come to 5 a.m. weight training for football, go to school all day, go to football practice, and then come to my event at 6 p.m. and be like, hey, Mr. Correa, I'm here to wash dishes. And I was like, how are you standing right now? man, my point was my perspective was so crowded by the opinions of others on these kids. And it was one of the best jobs I've had. I love working with kids. I think teenagers really do get a bad rap for just like they're so compared to like the most evil things on the planet. I'm not saying they're not scary, but yeah. Okay. Actually, so later in my career, I actually learned to like tell my colleagues that like I don't actually want to hear any opinions about your kids in your class. I want to make my own opinions because it would crowd my perspective so much. I would tell them, I don't want to hear about so-and-so's brother that was so bad. First off, we shouldn't be judging someone because of someone else. So it was crazy. Looking at Crosspoint Community Church this fall, I see a lot of opportunities here. And opportunities that we can look at as, the glass is half full. And we have a lot of opportunities to bring new families here to this church. I have in my notes here, the gospel starts with relationships. Having the opportunity to have a conversation with someone that's new in our church or invite them to church is where it all starts. And by the way, if you didn't know, there's still a ton of families that are looking for churches after the pandemic. I meet them all the time. We had 5 new families last week in our outdoor service and 12 new kids checked into kids ministry last week. So, they're out there, they're coming. So, in verse 8 it says, I know all things you do, that I have opened a door for you that no one can close. You have little strength, yet you obeyed my word and did not deny me. This passage literally talks about an open door that Jesus made. And this is what we have here as a church. So, we look at the gospel through 2 sets of eyes. So, the first is with opinions. All right? Are you going to be that person that has the opinions and is negative, the glass is half empty, and like everybody's moved out of California, there's no hope, Santa Rosa's going down the drain, all my Christian friends have moved away, or are we going to look at it through the eyes with the gospel? Are we going to be like, I don't care if Jesus puts 1 person in front of me or 30, I'm going to share the gospel. The phrase open door in the Bible is quite interesting. I think most people actually use it out of context. So you probably heard people say, I'm just waiting for God to open a door for me so I can have my life be good and my career. I want God to open a door so I can go on my mission trip to Fiji or whatever. Nothing wrong with Fiji. They probably need missionaries too. But in the Bible, open door almost always refers to sharing the gospel. I don't know if you knew that. That was interesting. So, examples, Acts 14:27. They had arrived and gathered at the church together. They began to repeat all things that God had done for them. He had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles. 1 Corinthians 16:9. For a wide door of effective ministry is open to me, and there are many adversaries. 2 Corinthians 2:12. Now they have come to Troas for the gospel of Christ when a door was open for me. Are you guys getting it? Right? All right. Colossians 4:3. Pray at the same time for us. God will open for us a door of the word so that we may speak forth the mystery of Christ, for I have also been imprisoned. We often think that the gospel is this scary, evangelizing is this really uneasy thing that only, extroverts do. And sometimes we feel like, everyone's moved. There's no hope. We live in a horrible city and all this stuff. But I feel like we always forget that like Jesus is so in control. So, and there's that John 5 story of the guy at the healing pool. You know what I'm talking about? He was there for like 38 years. And the scripture says that like he literally tells Jesus, there's no hope. It's over. And Jesus is like, get up and go, please. Just leave. You're good. You're healed. But like there's always that chance. We always like to say, it's over, we're done, I can't do it. That's the farthest thing from the truth. And it really shows the 2 ways of living. So Mike's going to talk about that.
Good. Yeah, so 2 different sets of eyes. We look through God's eyes, we see a very different world than often we see. And it takes training, and what Jesus also talks about here is it affects how we live. The lens that we look at life through is going to affect how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And Jesus addresses that here for this church. So we looked at 2 sets of eyes, but now we're looking at two ways of living. What actions flow out of having the right perspective on the world? And the first one is this, two ways of living. The first one is we can live in the lies. The lies. This is what this church was facing. Verse 9. Behold, I'll cause those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews but are not, but lie. I'll make them come and bow down at your feet. And then we'll finish that verse here in just a minute. So the synagogue of Satan, we dealt with this back a few letters, the church in Smyrna. We talked about how there was something specific going on in Roman culture at the time. This isn't talking about all Jewish people. This has been misused in history. It's not saying that all Jewish people are bad or anything like that. This is talking about a group who weren't even practicing religious Jews, but were taking that on in order to spread lies and persecution towards the Christians. And the result was Christians were getting dragged off to jail. Christians were getting tortured and Christians were getting killed as part of this persecution. And I love how Jesus looks at this church and he doesn't just say, hey, how come you're just little and small? Grow and get bigger. He looks at them and he says, I know what you're up against. I know what you've been facing. I know the lies that are being told about you. I know the ways you've been mistreated. I know the uphill battle you're facing. Jesus looks at them and he says, you could live in those lies. Where does that come from, by the way? It comes from Satan, the deceiver, the father of misleading, right? And that's trickled down into your life. And now you can choose to live as though the lies that are being told about you are true. You can believe that or not. And I was thinking about that for us. It's easy to believe the lies that have been told about you, isn't it? I think some of us sitting here are carrying words with us that were said maybe years and years and years ago that we still feel like define us. Maybe it was something that a parent said to us. You'll never amount to anything. Wish I never had you. Or a teacher, you'll always be a failure. Maybe words of a spouse or a child or a boss or a former friend who said something about us that we've then taken and carried with us. And Jesus looks at this little church who's had lies spread around it, who's been suffering persecution because of it, and he says, I don't want you to live anymore in those lies. God is a God who wants to break through, as we sang this morning, he wants to break through those lies, to overcome those lies in our life. So two ways of living. We could live in the lies, or if you're a note taker, you might have already filled in the other blank. We could live in, it wasn't the truth. Now you have to cross it out if you're in pen. See, you should wait until I put it up there. There's the lies, or interesting, Jesus says something really interesting about love. I find verse 9 to be the most fascinating verse in this letter. Behold, I'll cause those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews but are not, but they lie. I'll make them come and bow down at your feet. This is a victory thing, right? They're going to come, they're going to bow down at your feet, and then what comes next? And then you can tell them how wrong they were, or then we'll destroy them together, or whatever it is. But no, the verse ends and says, I'll make them bow down at your feet and make them know that I have loved you. The most important thing on Jesus' mind here isn't proving victory over them. Yes, your enemy is going to be destroyed, but the most important thing is I want them to know how much I love you. What does it mean in your life that Jesus truly loves you? Or maybe ask a different way. How would your life change if you truly believed that Jesus loves you fully and completely? Everything about you. One thing it changes is eternity. That's where this letter goes. Verse 10, I'm going to preserve you because of your perseverance through the testing that's going to come. Verse 11, I'm coming quickly, so hold fast. And then verse 12, he who overcomes, I'll make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Not you'll be in the temple and you'll be a little insignificant piece. No, pillars are important. If we knocked out these pillars over here, wouldn't recommend sitting over in the overflow. Like, pillars are important. And he says, you're going to be an important part of a worship of God forever because you won't go out from it anymore, the middle of verse 12. And I'll write on him, this is anyone who overcomes, I'll write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and my new name. I'll put on you the truth because I love you that much. The love of Jesus affects eternity. He loved us so much, he was willing to die in our place. So it isn't about working at all. If we've just put our faith in him, then our eternity is set with him. But it also affects how we live right now. When something bad happens in your life, do you start thinking, I think God hates me? I think God's trying to get me because he doesn't like that I did this or that. That's not what's happening. That's not how God works. How about this? When you're feeling rejected in life, when you feel like there's nobody who truly loves you, when you feel like if anybody knew my secrets, the darkness I carry with me, if anybody truly knew that, they could never love me. The truth is, Jesus knows everything about you and loved you so much that he came and died for you. The love of Jesus is overwhelming, and it changes how we live, how we think, how we walk through life together. We're able to walk in confidence because we understand that there is the all-powerful God of the universe who loves us so much that he would give, that he would invite us in. Two ways of living. We can live in the lies, or we can live in this incredible love that Jesus wants to display to the world about us. So that's the what in this passage. Let's talk about the so now what. What does this look like in our lives? How do we live this out? And the first one that Chris is going to talk about is looking for God's view and not for our own opinion.
Yeah, everyone likes to share their own opinions and has different perspectives on things. So another one of my movies I watched. There's this movie TV show called Winnie the Pooh. I don't know if you heard of it. And there is this character Eeyore. Eeyore, this poor guy, man. He's a Debbie Downer. He contributes nothing to his friends, and it's just really negative, glasses half empty, nothing positive. And I just wanted to share a story with you. Well, I was on a mission trip and I caught myself in a Eeyore personality. So, in 2013, I was on a team to Costa Rica. We took 30 teenagers. They were not evil, don't worry. 30 teenagers from around the different youth groups all around the country. And the whole purpose of the mission trip was to get them comfortable with sharing the gospel and to help them grow in Christ. We weren't really focused on like spreading the gospel. That was like the main point, but the point was really to build up these kids. So one time we were deep in the jungle, high elevation, and we were at this high school, and we were basically, putting kids in groups, playing games, and they were going to divide everyone, and we were going to share the gospel. And I had this other American teenager girl with me, and they put me in a group with 5 teenage Costa Rican girls. And I'm like, I'm not going to relate to these guys. Like, this is a wash. I'm super sick. I'm at elevation. I'm car sick. It's humid in the jungle. I was not a happy camper. I was like, let's just get through this. This is so awkward sharing the gospel. And I'm not the best at Spanish either. And I just had to read like the Spanish Bible tract or the script. And so I'm just like literally fumbling through this script. And I'm like, this is complete waste of time. I'm like looking at I'm like, what are we doing? And these 5 girls are just like, and so it comes to the point where I'm reading this script to them in Spanish. It talks about, do you want to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And I was like, well, raise your hand if this is something you want to do. And I'm like, I will be shocked if we get one. I got 5 for 5. Wow. It's my record to this day for one group. I have no idea. I did not think God was going to come through. Looking back at it now, I know why or how. But I was like, what? I have to get your information and send you to the local pastor now and get you connected. Like what? I'm like, this is so confused. It was a very humble bus ride back down that mountain. But we often make opinions on sharing the gospel and evangelizing. We also go like, this is not the way to do it. Like, this is not going to be effective. And we always forget that Jesus is in control. Yeah. We always forget that. Yeah. And sometimes we're so clouded in our eyes, we often forget that we're representing God. So perspective is your opinion. I tell this to the youth group all the time, that it's your life. You might as well make it not stressful. If you're going to be this negative Eeyore person, that sounds awful. I'm like, you control your life. You might as well live with your glass half full. So, go through doors God has opened. Okay? God will open doors for you. It happens all the time to share the gospel. Don't shut them.
Yeah.
Okay? God puts you in uncomfortable situations. All right? It's not easy being a Christian. Okay? It's not easy to share the gospel. It's not easy to evangelize. If it was, this place would be packed. It's not. It's not fun. It's very uncomfortable. And I just want you to remember, Mike talked about this too. He puts us in uncomfortable situations. God, not Mike. God puts us in uncomfortable situations. And just remember, it's not because he hates you.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone sitting in here knows somebody that refuses to come to church because they think God hates them. I'm sure we all know someone. It is very common. Okay?
Yeah, so going through doors that God has opened, that's interesting insight that open doors refers to sharing the gospel in the Bible. Isn't that interesting? It's not about what college I'm going to go to or what my next job is going to be. And it's interesting because we've talked about open doors here in Santa Rosa, here in our church, coming out of our own disaster. Philadelphia went through theirs, but now talking about how this letter applies to us. We came out of the fires in 2017 and said, we have a unique opportunity. God is opening doors in our city and our county that we've seen closed for generations. God's opening opportunities for the gospel. And we said, we don't know how long these opportunities are going to stay open. Suddenly we're invited into these conversations with the city council and county supervisors, and don't know how long that'll stay open, but we're going to make the most of it while we can. And it's interesting, there is a door that continues to stay open, and it's with our schools. Our schools were closed to churches for years. And what we saw was you guys, Crosspoint, this church was kind of at the epicenter of a shift of how churches are viewed by schools here in Santa Rosa and Sonoma County. Through the partnership we've had at Helen Lehman, there's been more and more and more openness that started here that spread to other schools. In fact, the former principal at Helen Lehman is encouraging she's in the district now, and she's encouraging other schools, open up your school to churches, and we're seeing other churches stepping in. And so this, just a week and a half ago, I got the opportunity to accept an award on your behalf.
Thank you.
You guys did great. Well done. I got to go to City Hall. They were having their Santa Rosa City Schools board meeting in it was very official. It was in the City Hall chambers at City Hall, with where the City Council normally is and stuff. And they were recognizing organizations in the community who have made an impact in local Santa Rosa City schools. And they called me up and gave an award. I have it right here. Look how official this is.
Oh my gosh, you're not kidding.
Look at that. That's you guys. And ooh, I can blind people with this too. Hey, Jan. Certificate of Appreciation awarded to Crosspoint Community Church in recognition of your dedication, passion, and support of Santa Rosa City Schools. This door continues to remain open. Not only did they call me up, they gave me a microphone.
Oh, no.
And that was dangerous. It's amazing to see how God continues to, there you go, display that bad boy. Is it right side up? It is, nice. God continues to allow these doors to be open. We've been talking about this Explore God series that we have coming up. It kicks off the last Sunday of the month, September 24th. This is an open door opportunity. There's something going on in the Bay Area that has never happened in the history of Christianity here, which is there are hundreds of churches across the greater Bay Area that are all addressing the same things during the same 8-week stretch that's centered on reaching unbelievers with questions that they have. What's the purpose of life? Is there even a God? Why is there pain and suffering in the world? Is Jesus really the only way? Isn't that too narrow? Who is Jesus? And each week we have an opportunity to be addressing these in a way that is meaningful to a lost community around us, and we're joining with hundreds of other churches. I'm so excited to be part of a Bay Area movement like we've never seen before. But like Chris was saying, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be uncomfortable in some ways. It starts with us inviting people into that conversation. That can be uncomfortable. Well, I've been encouraging you to be praying for your 3 people, having regular contact there, starting some spiritual conversations there. And then we'll be inviting those people to come and join us starting on September the 24th and moving forward. But it's going to look different here a little bit. Mostly it's the same. We're going to do worship, and we're going to have a message, and it's going to look similar. Every week, though, I'll be reintroducing myself. I'll introduce who I am. That's not for you. You already know. It's for the guests who are going to be here. After service, we're going to be having Revive like we do, but it's going to be different. It's not going to be discussion around round tables. It's going to be a question and answer time. It's going to be an opportunity for us to not throw a Bible at somebody who has a question, to not look down on or mock or make fun of somebody who's genuinely asking and wondering things, but to have a safe place here to be able to bring those questions. The lobby's going to look different. We're going to have our food and coffee and everything in the lobby. The doors to the church will be closed until about 20 minutes before service starts, so can't come in here yet as we're finishing things here. Instead, we'll have the opportunity to have conversation in the lobby, to greet people with relationship. Chris said, and food, the most important thing, right? Chris said, sharing the gospel starts with relationship. So we want to greet people with an open-armed approach, right? We also won't have name tags. And the reason why if you talk to anybody who's been in charge of the name tag table, the hardest thing about the name tag thing is new people, guests, visitors are really uncomfortable putting their name down and getting a name tag. We like it because we like seeing each other's names, especially us introverts, right? Like, oh yeah, that's who you are. But it's a barrier that makes people uncomfortable. We want to get rid of those barriers. So a little different for us, but for the sake of those that we're trying to reach. And home groups will look different too, because part of this is conversation that spills over into home groups that are meeting regularly every week. And some of our bigger home groups, they're going to need to split into a couple smaller groups during this time so that there's room. It's for a purpose. So there's room for other people to join in. We have an opportunity here, and we want to make the most of that opportunity. Jesus said to the church in Philadelphia, I've opened a door, nobody can close it. That includes you. So don't try to close a door that God's opened. Instead, let's walk through that door that God's opened. And then our last, so now what, this morning, we need to live in God's love and not in the lies. What name is written on you this morning? I'm not talking about your name tag. What name did you come in here etched on you? Is it a lie or a label that somebody put on you years ago, or maybe you put on yourself that you can't overcome? Maybe you've tried to take it off and you can't. I'm here to tell you this morning that Jesus has a different label than failure or addict or whatever it is that has defined who you are. Because Jesus, in his love, looks at you and says, you are wanted. You are loved. You are invited in to relationship. You've been adopted into my family. Jesus took those steps. It's just our job to trust him. If you haven't put your faith in Jesus, that's your first step. If you have, let's get rid of those other labels. And let's remember how God views us. Would you bow your heads for just a minute? Because I don't want to rush past that concept here. If this is really true, what we're talking about, if God's love is really this big, then we can stop fighting and being so defensive, struggling for power. We can relax, let God take care of all of that stuff. And let him work through us to impact the world around us. But it starts by truly accepting that God so loved you that much. Just take a minute right now. Think about whatever that label has been for you in your life. And I want to encourage you as we sing the words of this song, take off that false label. The church in Philadelphia was told, you're gonna be a pillar of importance in my temple, and I'm gonna put on you the truth about that you belong to God, that your eternity is set, that I've saved you and loved you. There's a lot of us who need to be reminded of the truth about how God views us. So let's take a minute right now to remember the truth of God's love together.